almost thought our thoughts were a representation of us. And then that was a huge transition for me where I was like, we're not our thoughts. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Roaming Collective podcast. I'm Trisha, your host of the podcast. I'm a certified human design reader and an intuitive. This is a story that I've been really wanting to share. It is something that I felt so deeply that I felt like the message needs to get out there. It's just a little bit more vulnerable and something to deal with mental health too. So if mental health is a touchy subject for you, maybe tune in and listen to this for when you feel ready. And it was something that I just felt like I needed to really be able to express my journey with this and my story with this, because my hope is that, of course, with every single podcast episode, that something within this might help you or spark something in your life. And even if things that we're going through in the moment feel really difficult and they feel just very intense, I always like to remind myself that everything that you're going through is always for a reason. There's always something on the other side of it, and there's always brighter days. There's always things that can come out of this, and there's never anything that is, quote, good or bad. It's always something that is working for you, a lesson or things that you might have not noticed, or certain behaviors or certain trends or anything that you felt like you have been leaning into that maybe isn't within your own best interest, right? These things can feel so intense when we're in the moment, but on the other side, you look back and you're like, oh, now I kind of see why that happens. And it's almost when you're looking backwards, so you can start to see the thread of understanding, like, okay, now I can kind of see of why this was starting to really culminate and come through. My big intention too, anytime I'm always giving a podcast episode, I always set the intention that who's ever listening to this is you're here for a reason. You're meant to be hearing this message, or you're meant to share this with someone else, because I want to be here and share my story so that you feel like you can step into your own life and to take these lessons, and so you can feel like you're in that alignment and that flow and just being able to allow things to come in a little bit easier. So let me be your person to be going through and trying to go through all these life lessons, and I'll come back and I'll share with you guys as I'm navigating a lot of this. A couple years ago when I was in college, this was kind of like my first entry point into understanding some mental health. And when I talk about mental health, I really like to put any diagnosis terms in ways of less I have and more of things that I experience. Anxiety is not something that is a part of me. Anxiety is just something that I experience. It is just physical feelings, thoughts, it's just different emotions that run through me. It's not like a core representation of who I am. And so when I put mental health in that framework, I just feel like that kind of takes some of that spotlight off of it a little bit and takes off like any of those like diagnosis terms too, where it's just like where you kind of feel like, okay, I have anxiety, and just kind of like you embody that. So it's more just like sometimes you can experience anxiety and like that's fine, that's okay, that's a normal human experience to be having. When I was in college, this was my junior year, I ended up seeing a therapist for the first time because I was just feeling very anxious, just going through like a rough time. And I think junior year was also a very intense time too, of like when you're getting close to graduating before your senior year, and it just feels like course load work and everything just heightens a lot more. And so during that time I was seeing a therapist, and it was my first time going to therapy. And I was so grateful that I went, because it just gave me a huge lens into starting to understand myself, and not in a way to be hard on myself of like, why was I experiencing anxiety? It's not from that lens, but more of a sense of, oh, okay, like now I understand myself, and now I can see things that maybe are not in my highest good, things that sometimes can take me off track, or just things that aren't making me feel my best. And so when I kind of know how my mind works, then I'm able to be like, okay, I know this is happening. I know this is like, it just gives like framework around it. Since then, I had seen a couple different therapists. I was going to a couple different ones throughout my years when I had left college and I was living in Chicago. And I was seeing a therapist for quite a few years. She was amazing. I just feel like we bonded so well. And that's like the best when you find a therapist. So you feel like you just click and they just like get you. It's like, it's the best feeling, especially when you can build that bond and that trust too. And so I was seeing her for quite a few years, and I was living in Chicago at the time. This was right in December of 2023. And that was also a big year that was also coming up for me when I was like starting to move to Austin. And there was just a lot of change that was also coming around too that I knew was going to be changing. I had gone to the dispensary and I had gone previously with my friends, and weed is legal in Chicago. So just caveat for that. We were going, it was completely legal. Everything was fine. I just learned that drugs just do not agree with my body. Like, I just do not do well with any of that. I just stay away. Intuitively, I think I've always known that. But it just does not work for me. For me, I just knew that it was something that I think was going to trigger too much in my mind. And weed was never something that like actually relaxed me. I think it did the opposite effect on me. I was at the dispensary like a time before with my friends, and they had recommended this for me to get this one. It was like very low. It was like 2 milligrams with like THC and CBD. Like, so it was only one of each, very low dose. I took that one a couple times and I was like, okay, like this is, yeah, like I feel like more calm and relaxed with that. Especially with CBD mixed in. Wasn't with my friends. I just went on my own, and that was a mistake because I go in and I'm like talking to the people who work there, and I'm like, okay, like this is what I'm looking for. They're like, okay, here, take this. But I probably should have given more of my background. Like, I don't really do well with this stuff. Like, what is it like more in the CBD route? So they gave me these gummies, and I ended up taking one, and I took half of one, and I was like, okay, I'm not really feeling anything. Then I'm taking the other half. I had never experienced this in my life. It was horrible. The entire time I was having intrusive thoughts. I literally felt like I was going to throw up the entire time when I was like high. I felt the room was spinning. I felt like I was going to die. I was like, my body was physically shaking. It was literally awful. I was like, I feel like I need to go to the hospital right now. I was like, I'm not going to make it. Like, this is the end of the road for me. And I just felt just so, it was just like, extremely uncomfortable. It was terrible. It turns out that I ended up taking 30 milligrams because I didn't realize that it was so much because that's what they gave me at the store. And I was like, okay, this is what they recommended. And then when I was looking back, I was like, okay, no wonder for my body that I was only taking 2, and then now I'm taking 30, which was extreme. And I was like, my body cannot take that. I was like, absolutely not. So even the next morning when I woke up, those intrusive thoughts did not leave. They were still there, and they just kept getting worse. And I was in Chicago, and I just remember during that time, that is the worst time to be in Chicago. And that January timeframe, it is dark. It is getting dark at 4 p.m. It is cold. It is like miserable. No one's really out doing stuff. Like, it is just like the most depressing time of the year in Chicago. And so this fell right when that timing was happening. I was feeling not myself. So these intrusive thoughts were still in my mind. They were in there for like maybe almost a month and a half or 2 months. And I felt like my mind was stuck, was the best way to describe it. Like, I felt like there was like something like blocking my mind. Like, this intrusive thought was like in the front here, where it was like not letting it go. It could not just like let it dissolve. It was like just gripping onto this so tightly. And it was trying to solve it. It was like trying to go down every single scenario, trying to understand it, be like, why is this thought in my mind? And like trying to really like get to the core of like, why am I experiencing this? But I feel like I was just uncomfortable, and I also just felt like disturbed in a way. Like, I just felt like icky. Like, it was just like a disturbing type of thing where I was like, I just do not like what my mind is trying to like bring up. And then I felt a lot of like physical symptoms too. So the first thing, anytime I experience anxiety, the first thing out the window is my appetite. So anytime I'm extremely anxious, I feel like I physically cannot eat. It's like I want to eat, but like my body just feels like I can't eat. I just don't have the appetite for it. And then I wasn't getting sleep. So then I felt like I couldn't even fully rest. My mind was just not turning off. Like, it was just constantly running. I was just feeling dark. I just couldn't really do anything. I couldn't really leave my apartment in a way. I was out doing stuff, but I just felt like I wasn't really like, I just wasn't myself. Things didn't feel light and bright. They felt dark and heavy. This is not the normal anxiety that I experience. I was like, this is just another level of something that I haven't experienced before. I was telling my therapist at the time, and we were like trying to work through it, and I was still just like, something is not clicking. I was watching Bravo, and there was an ad that came up on the screen for OCD, and it was like talking about OCD on there. And something within my intuition was just like, I need to look into this. I started to do more research about OCD, and I was just like, I think this might be what I'm experiencing. Everything that is really starting to like make sense for why my mind is operating in this way. I have an appointment with my therapist and I tell her and I was like, hey, I think this might be what I'm experiencing. And she's like, okay. She's like, I'm not trained in OCD, but let me ask you a couple questions and we can kind of figure out to see like your next path forward. She's like, I want to make sure if this is something that you're experiencing, we might need to switch up your therapist so that way you can get the full understanding of what someone's going through with that. We would kind of talk it through a little bit and I am just answering some of the questions, and at the end she's like, yeah, I think let's have you go talk to another therapist who's trained in OCD and just kind of see and then kind of get their point of view. Mind you, this is so chaotic. Again, this like whole time frame where I mentioned in the first episode, where this was like right before I was about to move. So this is like January, February timeframe, and I'm about to move at the end of June. So I was like, this is not ideal time to be finding a new therapist, but I'm like, I need the support. Like I need the help. I end up finding this therapist, and I'm so eternally grateful that I found her because as soon as we get on the call, we just did like a little like 15-minute intro, just like get to know each other. And I'm telling her all my symptoms, everything I'm experiencing. And she was, I'm gonna have to talk to you a little bit more, but she's like, this is sounding like OCD. And in a way, was I upset and crying? Absolutely. It was just like a dark time. And I think sometimes the hardest part is asking for help and just being able to look at that and just be like, something's not right. And then being able to like dive a little bit deeper into that. It does take a lot of courage and a lot of bravery to get to that point. I felt like a sense of relief of like, okay, so my mind isn't broken. I didn't break my mind. I didn't like this wasn't something that I caused my brain to do. It was just more so like there just might be some inner workings of how my brain likes to operate and solve things, and that is just no longer serving me anymore. I am just so grateful that I started working with her because she taught me so much about OCD. And so OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder. I realized this is something that started for me in my childhood. There was one time that my parents had gone to the grocery store and they were like, okay, like we'll be back at like, in 30 minutes or whatever. And they hadn't come back at the time that they said they would. And I think I was like maybe 6 or 7. And that this was around the time when I think there was like one cell phone, like cell phones weren't super common. And so I'm on the home phone and I'm calling my parents and I'm like by the window, bawling my eyes out, waiting for them to get home because I thought that they were dead or something traumatic happened to them. This has been something that has been in my inner workings of my mind for a very long time. And then when I start to learn more about OCD, I was looking backwards and I was like, oh, I think this is something that has been kind of percolating throughout my time. Looking in hindsight, even though I was like, I'm swearing off weed, gummies, all that stuff. Looking backwards though, I was like extremely grateful though, because I don't think I would have caught this OCD if it wasn't something that was an intrusive thought that was so out of left field for me that I wouldn't have been like, whoa, something's off, right? Because it was something that was like more of that normal inner workings of my mind and maybe would have not have caught it. But since it was an intrusive thought that was just so out there, I was able to be like, oh, okay, like that actually got me moving into learning about this. And I'm so grateful that I did, because when I learned so much more about it, now I'm like, okay, now I am able to like rewire more of how my brain is programmed. So then I don't have to be solving all these things and going so much deeper into all this. It's like something that I'm able to really be able to like work with now, where I can like see it more as like a friend or just that voice that's coming through in a protective lens. And so I was extremely grateful for that gummy, even though it was still extremely traumatic when I was going through it. In hindsight, I was like, wow, like I am so glad that happened, because who knows how long that thought pattern could have been running in my mind without me even realizing. And then it could have just caused more, who knows, like I could have been in more situations or more things that I wouldn't have wanted to be in otherwise. I started working with this therapist. She taught me so much. And again, I'm not a therapist. I'm more so just explaining it from my own perspective and my own lens. So that way it might help you to like realize something. I'm just more so sharing my experience in a way. And I'm not here to like diagnose people. I'm just more so in a way of like, here's what my experience was. So when I was talking to her, OCD is a sneaky one, especially when it is mental compulsions, which that was the one that my mind was more so going through. And the fact that I caught it is wild. But again, it was something that was extreme for me. So OCD, the way it works, you get an intrusive thought. And Intrusive thoughts, every single human has them, every single person. Like you just get a thought and you're like, what was that random thought? Like, why did that even come through? And so instead of having a brain that maybe doesn't grab onto those thoughts, OCD instead loves to grab onto it and to be like, wait a minute, why did this thought come in? This doesn't represent who I am. And OCD loves to go after your core values, your core beliefs, anything that you feel like is so true and intrinsic to who you are. OCD loves to go and attack that, loves to just grip onto it. Because if you have like a dark thought about something, then your mind immediately would go, wait a minute, I don't feel like I don't experience that. Like, why is that thought even in me? That doesn't explain me. And then the mind starts to go through and then starts to do mental compulsions, which is trying to solve the thought. So it'll try to like get to complete certainty about it. And that is the thing with OCD. OCD loves to have certainty. And that is where, for me, my own personal journey and so much in life, it was like honestly kind of like a metaphor for the rest of my life too, of like, I always did not like uncertainty. Uncertainty was something that always made me feel a little bit like, I don't love it. It just makes me feel icky. I don't really like to have uncertainty. I like to just know. I like to be in control and I like to know because then I know it's coming and then I can relax and then everything just goes smoothly. But then that's not how life works. And so OCD really taught me that it's okay to sit with the uncertainty. And my mind was just wanting to get to solve to things to give me that certainty, to give me that sort of like protection. So in a backwards way, your mind just loves you because your mind is trying to protect you and your body is just trying to protect you to be like, we don't want this thought in here. We don't want this to represent anything. We don't want to get in harm's way. So if we solve this and we try to understand it, then that won't happen. And so it's kind of like a backwards way, but then it's also causing harm, right, within the mind. So it's a dance, right? It's a balance of understanding how that inner working happens. I understood that. I was like, okay, this makes so much sense. So there's mental compulsions. So your mind will try to ruminate on things. That's huge. It'll just keep circling things, trying to solve it. It'll argue with the thought. It'll like your mind is just so enthralled with this thought. And mind you, the difference with OCD, obsessive is the key word. If you are like experiencing something and then it just kind of flows away, OCD is obsessive. It is something that you just feel like you can't stop thinking about, and it's something that lasts and lasts and lasts, and then something that just keeps going. And so that's kind of the difference, where sometimes things might kind of come and go, and that's the difference with anxiety, where the anxiety wave will kind of happen. OCD is just like, that wave is just like constant. And then you just feel like you can't stop thinking about it for like an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. Mental compulsions were big for me. And then there's also more of some other different compulsions. And sometimes you may never be fully certain of a compulsion, but you can start to really understand where you might have some behaviors or some things that maybe it's just no longer helping you anymore. And so one that was big for me too was reassurance seeking. A lot of this can also be things that happen in real life. For me, a while ago, I had chipped my tooth. And then after that, this is also just part of OCD that I didn't realize at the time that I was going through, but I would check my tooth in the mirror. I would be so afraid that I would chip it again. So I would be checking it in the mirror. Checking's big too for OCD. I would be going to the dentist more often than I probably should, looking for reassurance, asking if it chipped again, like just feeling very hyper vigilant around my teeth and very hyper fixated. I was also scared that I also didn't want to like fully like chew on it. Like there was just so many things that my mind was just, which are compulsions. So I was like very much trying to like mitigate this thing so it didn't happen again was the key thing that my mind was doing. I didn't want to chip my tooth again. I didn't want to go through that. So I'm going to do all these things so that it doesn't come back and happen again. So that was how my mind was operating. And I mean, just talking about it now, I'm like, I'm exhausted. I'm like, even as I'm sharing this, like, no wonder why my mind and my body, like, no wonder I became so exhausted, because my mind is just doing this all the time and it's just running on autopilot, and I didn't realize it was doing that. Physical compulsions are huge too. Sometimes health stuff can also be very, very common as well, where if you're like fearful, if you might have a sort of disease, so you constantly Google symptoms, you're like on these Reddit threads, like you'll never feel satisfied with an answer. And so it's just automatically, boop, you just go back to square one, where you kind of feel that temporary relief, and then you're just like back up here again. And so it's just like this cycle that just keeps going. And I was like, get me out of the loop. I was like, get me out of this. It was just overwhelming. I had talked to her. We did like a couple tips. And so again, as I am sharing this, please go to your therapist if you have one, or seek out therapy if you're experiencing any of this and you just want to like talk to someone. These were just some tips that she gave me and things that helped me during that time. One that was huge was sitting with the thoughts and not engaging. That was also just a life changer for me in general. Just allowing a thought to be there and you don't have to grab down onto it. Where I almost thought our thoughts were a representation of us. And then that was a huge transition for me where I was like, we're not our thoughts. I didn't choose that thought. Is that coming from me? Sometimes these things just pop into our minds and then you get to choose what you want to engage with and what you want to grab onto. So to just let a thought go through, you don't engage with it, which means you don't think about it. You don't just try to like pull it down and like understand it. You're just like, okay, I'm having that thought again. So let's say you get like a thought and you're like, okay, what do I want for dinner? Instead of going through and you're like, okay, well, maybe I should have chicken in the fridge. Well, then I kind of want to go out, but then I have to grocery shop. That's kind of like an example of like engaging with a thought. So instead of doing that, you're just like, okay, what do I want to have for dinner? And you're like, okay, I noticed something about what I want for dinner right now. I have to focus on what I'm doing. Let me re-engage with what I'm doing right now. And then you just kind of let the thought pass. And so that was huge in the way of OCD because OCD becomes obsessive. And so when you keep engaging with the thought, it just keeps going down that track more and more. It just keeps you in that loop cycle. And so when you're able to just like, okay, I notice I'm having that thought, instead of trying to like go and solve it and understand it and then try to do compulsions around it, that to me was also just so life-changing in life in general. So not even in an OCD lens. Maybe a thought that is a little uncomfortable or something that you don't really want to be thinking about, or just like a limiting belief coming through, you can acknowledge it and then you sit with it and then you don't engage and then you just re-engage with whatever you're doing. And I feel like that was just so helpful for any life situation instead of just in an OCD lens. I was like, this could help you out within life in general. And it's really getting comfortable with the uncertainty of it, of trusting that I might not always have the answer and I'm okay still. And I think that for me, the big thing that OCD was teaching me was I needed to regain trust in myself, because sometimes it was almost like trying to put me in lenses of like solving things before they happen, but almost like taking out the fact that I also can solve things in the moment. And I also do really good with being present and like getting into action when something is presented in front of me. And so it was almost kind of like discounting that part of myself of like, I can trust myself and I do actually know what to do in the moment. I don't need to think 20 steps ahead and I don't need to like go fully down this mind track of like solving this thought before it even happens. That was also a huge positive coming out of this, was like learning how to trust myself again and like understanding that I can solve things in the moment. And like, even if I don't fully have an answer, I'll still be okay. And so just sitting with that uncertainty and trusting myself, I think was huge in like every single regard of my life, not even just this. It was teaching me a lesson across the board. And so when I was also working with her too, we also were doing exposure response therapy, a really good one to really like sit with those thoughts too. So it's like kind of like you resist the urge of doing a compulsion. So you like put yourself in the situation or the thought or anything that feels uncomfortable. And those were not fun because you're almost like facing your fear. Those were, so the way that you kind of do your exposure therapy is like you kind of pick what is like low on the scale versus what is high on the scale. It's not like they're throwing you into things where you're like going to be extremely uncomfortable. So you're kind of like taking baby steps. But I think it's also like such a beautiful way to look at it too, because you're facing your fear. Like you're facing your fears, you're sitting in the moment with it, you're understanding with it and you're sitting with it. It's almost like kind of like a really beautiful way when you look at it of, yes, it is extremely uncomfortable. Yes, it's so hard. Yes, it can be very just not a fun thing to do. Afterwards, when you kind of look back, you're like, oh, that actually was something that I felt just so aware of, because I was able to really be brave and to face that. And it almost kind of gives you like that sort of like confidence, that boost to know like, if I can face this, then I can go and do other things too. So it almost kind of builds that up in another way too. We worked on exposure therapy too, and just like understanding how to engage with the thoughts. And a book that she recommended for me, which I think is so life-changing, is called The Happiness Trap, and it's by Russ Harris. And this book, it's so exposure and prevention therapy is one side of OCD, and then once you kind of get past those exposures, then it's the ACT. So it's acceptance and commitment therapy. And so sometimes they do it in tandem, which again, I'm not a therapist, but the way that we did it was exposures first and then ACT after, which ACT helps you act in alignment with your values. ACT, it was a huge part of the book too. Accepting that the thoughts are there, and then connecting with the body, and then re-engage with what you're doing. So the terminology he gave was ACE. So again, acknowledge the thoughts, whatever thought is coming in. You don't have to engage with it. You can just acknowledge the thought, be like, okay, I'm experiencing this. You connect with the body. So you're like, okay, how does my body feel? Do I feel this thought? Do I feel this sort of feeling in my body anywhere? Do I have like chest pressure? Do I feel like my body is like tensing a little bit? And then you engage. So then you engage with what you're doing. So then you're like watching TV again, or like whatever you're cooking, like you just engage with that, and then you just kind of let it sit there. You don't have to solve it. You don't have to figure it out. It could just be there. And then you have to sit with the uncomfortability, which is the hardest part. But you just have to sit with it and notice it. And then you don't have to do anything. You can just keep living your life, keep doing your thing. And like that to me felt so freeing. I was like, wow, the way I have sometimes been living has been a little more on difficult mode than easy mode, where I'm trying to solve and like understand every single thing instead of just like letting it just sort of be there, and that's okay. Like I don't have to be doing everything all the time. I can just let it sit and then just like not have to solve it. Great. So that book to me was just so life-changing, because instead of trying to, the whole like arc of the book is how as humans we've been taught to really be happy, and if you're not happy there's something wrong with you. But actually, the human experience is to hold happiness and sadness and also go through suffering. So it's less of a goal like I want to be happy. It's more switching the goal to just like experiencing your humanness and just being able to understand your emotions. That's really the goal. The goal isn't to be happy 24/7, because that is the fastest way that you're actually going to be unhappy, because you're forcing this sort of feeling. And happiness it always returns, right? It's always returning, but sometimes some other emotions are going to come up, and like that is normal. That is just a human experience. That is the goal that we're here to have, is to have a human experience. We're not here to always be happy 24/7, 365 days a year. Like that would be great, but that's just not how it's going to go, unfortunately. So it's just like really understanding and like getting back into the body and like having more of an understanding, but like a relationship with that. And like I know it sounds a little uncomfortable to actually have that, and that has been such deep conditioning that is so deep within our society of like training yourself to always be happy and not allowing these negative emotions and thoughts to be coming through. But actually, when you're in those lows, then you can't experience the highs as much, because if you're always at a certain happiness, and you're never going to really fully feel the like levity of a happiness feeling, right? Like you're always going to be kind of like in that neutral zone. So the lows also give up to the highs, and the lows, they aren't anything to be scared of. Yeah, they are uncomfortable. Yeah, they can be dark. Yeah, they can be scary. And when you're in a low emotion, just feel it. It's okay. They're not here. Like they're just information for you. Emotions are sometimes just information. Sometimes it's just energy and motion. It's not anything that needs to dictate who you are as a person. They're just like the weather outside. Sometimes it's raining. Sometimes it's hailing. Sometimes it's sunny and bright. And it's just like allowing those to flow through you. And that, honestly, to me, is so much more liberating than like trying to like force this sort of feeling in. Because when you liberate yourself from that and then you feel more free from that, then like more things will flow in, and then like they can just kind of come and go, where it's like the sadness maybe doesn't last as long because it's not being gripped and it's not trying to like understand it and solve it. And like, yes, there are times where you want to like really understand emotion you might be having, right? But more so if it's just like a daily, everyday thing, you can just kind of go through the emotions. And anytime I'm in a low, it always takes me through to the high. So anytime I'm in a low emotion, I might feel very upset. Even just yesterday, I woke up and I was feeling in such a low feeling. And I was like, I just do not have the energy to do anything today. It's just been like very heavy. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to take that with me. And I was like, what is like one thing I can do in this moment that will help my body and help me? So I was like, let me just, instead of trying to like force out the entire day to plan it all out, let me take it moment by moment and minute by minute. And then let me just take this feeling with me. I don't need to understand it. I don't need to fix it. I don't need to solve it. Sometimes our emotions aren't anything to fix or solve. Let me just feel it and understand that I can keep doing my day with this feeling. And once it kind of, I just like was, went for a walk, went and got lunch, and then I was able to do things with my business later in the day. Then it just kind of flowed out. And then I was like, oh, I feel a little bit more lighter. So sometimes things just need to flow through you and just let them. It's okay. Sometimes even yesterday, like I was even still getting in that mind track where I was like, I need to fix this feeling. I was like, I don't want to feel this right now. I have so much to do. And I was like, okay, well, I can't really fix it. So I instead had to just take it moment by moment. I was like, what is something that will help me right now? And that honestly was so much that I learned from understanding this OCD lens, because I don't think I would have had this understanding or this approach if I didn't experience OCD. And so, yeah, it's not fun. Yes, it can come through as like a protective voice that is really trying to just rile you up sometimes, and not in a dismissive way, but just in a way of, okay, sometimes this voice isn't maybe the most helpful for me in the moment. And when I understood a lot of this, I think it unlocked a lot more for me of like more understanding how to like operate and how more it helps me instead of trying to go down these like patterns that are maybe no longer supporting my mind track. When I was working with that therapist in Chicago, she told me, she was like, the fact that how much you got done in a short month period, she's like, that is so impressive. I was devoted to just getting into a lighter, brighter place. I just feel so extremely grateful that I was able to talk to that therapist, because she was able to give me so many tips and tools and just things that I was able to really understand. And yes, it was not fun. And during that time, it was so hard. I just remember going to the gym on certain days and I would just walk there and I was just feeling just so heavy and I would just be crying, and it was just such a hard time. So if you are going through anything with that mentally, like if you are also feeling like you were in a dark time, I just want to give you the biggest hug right now, because I remember that feeling and it was just so heavy and it was just so like just weighing on me. And so this is just your reminder that I'm on the other side now. And yes, I still have moments where some of those will come in and they can feel very scary and it can still feel very intense at times. But just know that on the other side, there's just so much brighter, and there's just always a lesson, just something that you might not see the full understanding for it yet, but trust that it's coming and that it's there. If you need help, seek out help, go talk to a therapist, go without your community, try to see like what avenues for mental health there are out there, because it is just so imperative and it's okay. And if you feel like you've gotten off track, like that's normal. That's part of the human experience. So if you are feeling like a little bit like, oh, my mind has gotten off track and I don't know how to get back on track, there's always a way, there's always support, there's always help, and there's always something that will help you get back on there. And it's okay. Like, don't be hard on yourself if you're feeling a little bit like, oh, this is just not where I want to be at right now. Listen, I hear you. I totally get it. It can feel extremely tough, but I got through it and you'll get through it too. I promise. Everything will always work itself out. So today was just, again, a little overview of like what I experienced during that time and how much I learned so much around this. And again, I just want to encourage you to, if you are experiencing any of this, to really seek out help and support. And I am here to also give you the biggest hug. And I also just wanted to make sure like I share my story. So if it might help you within your own life too. And if anything else to take away from this, from the message, is that even if things look dark, there's always something else on the other side. And there's always a lesson, because I needed to go through that. I needed to understand and to have that, because now I don't get so caught up in those solving modes. And then sometimes I don't go full down that track where it's been able to help my mental health immensely. So I am sending you so much love, so much joy, and you can do this, okay? I believe in you. You can absolutely do this. And then I will catch you guys in the next episode, okay? Sending you so much love.